The 1970s were filled with change for WGPA. In 1972, after years of rumors and negotiations, the FCC issued notices regarding the decentralization of mass media ownership. This rule would effectively prevent one entity from owning a newspaper and/or TV or radio station in the same market. This decentralization by the FCC led to the sale of the station in August from ABE Broadcasting, a subsidiary of the Globe-Times newspaper, to Arthur H. Holt of Washington, D.C. for $265,000. Art Holt had grown up in radio and had a deep understanding of all aspects of the business.
Went to the University of Texas, got a degree in what was called radio broadcasting at the time. It happened to be one of the 3 universities in the country that gave a degree in radio at the time. So we did that and went from place to place, like sort of like Mr. Bojangles, and ended up being vice president of a group called the McClendon Corporation. Gordon McClendon was the early pioneer of rock and roll, and was his exec VP, managed stations for him in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago. And he started to dismantle his empire. Then I went to New York and was exec VP of a radio and television representative company representing radio and TV stations all over the country for national advertising. So did that and then started my own company in the 60s. By that time, I'd traveled all over the country so many times, and travel and knowing people all over the country and knowing what was going on all over the country was a unique asset at the time. People didn't do that. Somebody else had bought me $500,000 worth of plane tickets, so I knew what was going on. So obviously, the logical thing to do was to convert this into consultancy because it's an original idea if it takes place 500 miles from your hometown. So I began to do that and added station brokerage and appraisals to that mix, and then started doing some international consulting because at McClendon we'd had a couple of stations outside the United States. We'd had Radio Nord off Stockholm and XETRA in Tijuana, Mexico. So I do something about international broadcasting, and I actually was on a project in Johannesburg, South Africa, putting a radio station in Swaziland, when my attorney in Washington sent me a telex, what you used to send at that time, a telex, advising me that he'd run across the fact that the stations here in Bethlehem were for sale.
After purchasing the station, one of the first things Holt did was install an automation system that, when running properly, streamlined the workflow and added polish to the station's sound, and also eliminated most live announcements but still maintained WGPA's MOR block programming format. Another change that occurred around this time was when the call letters of WGPA FM were changed to WEZV to better identify and distinguish the station from its AM counterpart and to emphasize the easy listening format of the time. However, by the late 1970s, Holt saw that FM radio had officially arrived and a new format was on the horizon.
In 1972, it was a complete non-starter. I had in Dallas, I had a 100,000 watt FM with at 1,700 feet on Cedar Hill that belonged to a family with over $500 million. KRLD, 1080, 50,000 watt clear channel station. It was the whole thing, and we couldn't even get in the ratings book in '72. We couldn't get in the ratings book, and by '78, the totally had shifted. That's during that time. Obviously, that's why I was attracted to a GPA type station, where you could buy it, where the value was in the FM, but you could buy it for an AM price. That obviously made good economic sense because the FMs were perceived as no better. Some people, KAP had turned theirs off. Cost too much to run. Let's turn it off. Click. And Washington Post gave one away, and so like that. So it's just what they did. It took about as much smarts as in 1997 thinking, hey, this internet may work. Yeah, it's got to work. Look out. And you could either keep the blinders on, but you knew if you thought about it, if you took a macro view of it, and then just keep your head down with a micro look at it, you could certainly know it was going to happen.
With his focus on the emerging album-oriented rock format on FM, Art Holt sold WGPA AM to Hank and Mary Chadwick from Gwinnett Valley, PA in July of 1978 for $400,000. Hank Chadwick was a broadcast veteran who had been involved in radio and TV sales since 1956. He was a sales representative with WIP in Philadelphia, vice president and Philadelphia manager of John Blair & Company radio division, and general manager of WPVI TV in Philadelphia as well.